I'm going to try to get through this. I filmed about 30 videos over the past couple days documenting my process to figure out why I was getting intermittent check engine lights. Parts 1 through 11, no code was thrown because I had the Banks exhaust brake turned off. I didn't realize at that time that the Banks exhaust brake wiring was the culprit here. You can look at all these videos by going to Banks Economind Troubleshooting. Part 12, I'm driving around for 30 minutes. It's not throwing any codes. As soon as I turn the exhaust brake on, throws a code. Parts 11 through 20, I start suspecting the Banks exhaust brake wiring more. That's when I start getting weird codes driving the truck around again with the exhaust brake turned on. P0336, that's a weird code. In the past, I've seen P0513 and some code about the ABS module voltage being high. Part 21, this is a big one. I discovered that the connector to the solenoid in the Banks exhaust brake had the connectors crimped to the insulation. So I'm not sure if you can see it there, but this crimp, that's crimped to the black insulation. It's not crimped to the wire. So the bare wire is actually dangling inside of there. It's incredible. Both of these crimps that came with the Banks exhaust brake wiring were crimped to the insulation, not to the actual wire, and so as a result there wasn't a good conductivity with those solenoid wires. So that was huge. Cut those out and re-crimped it. Parts 22 through 25, I redo the crimps and I added flyback diodes. We'll get to that in a minute. Parts 26 through 30, just driving the truck around. Level 6, I love it. No codes are being thrown. Truck feels great. Started out the other day with, I had a video posted. And, I thought my issue was that it was maybe some wiring. I took apart the split wiring loom. There's a brown wire here. I thought maybe that was acting like an antenna. That was wrong. Without the Economind installed, I saw a nice clean square wave. This is the signal. Nice clean square wave, crisp. With the Economind installed, it was a little choppier. Well, upon further inspection during this video series, I realized that they're just conditioning the circuit. It's a little more round, and as you rev it, there's a little bit of a ripple there. At idle, they're just doing some conditioning here, probably a low pass filter or something, maybe a ferrite bead, some kind of choke. But for like logic, 5-volt logic, it's fine. I thought maybe because they were splicing into this 5-volt supply, it was probably bad. Why weren't they splicing into the camshaft? They're probably driving their crankshaft circuitry with this 5-volt supply, so they want it to be dedicated too. That's fine. I've showed these other factory service manual clips in a previous video. Replaced almost all of these sensors with genuine Cummins, except the fuel control actuator, because that seemed to be working good, and it was expensive as heck. Getting back to get these out of the way. Here's some pictures of like different codes being thrown on the just driving around at night. It was very random. I mean, my favorite is the P000. That's just like, we don't even know what the heck is wrong, dude, but something weird is going wrong. But mainly it's P0336, and I think then, the tuner wasn't always showing an error, but sometimes it would show a 3-1 error. Once when I was driving around at night and it threw a first check engine code as soon as I turned the exhaust brake on, that's when I started suspecting the exhaust brake. So that was around part 12. And then in part 13, 20, I start really deep diving into the exhaust brake, and when I measure the signal at the solenoid, I see some huge voltage swings. I had my oscilloscope here, I think, set to like 10-volt resolution, and then when I set it to 100-volt resolution, I mean, there's almost a 100-volt swing right there at that solenoid, which is crazy. That's when I really started looking at the exhaust brake. It's just funny how something so tiny I could forget about, but that threw off everything during this process. So I bought the exhaust brake from Banks back in March of 22. I installed it in April of 22. Okay. And shortly after installing it, I got like P0477 and P0478. Called tech support, Banks tech support. They didn't really have a good answer. They thought maybe it was the wiring in the switch. I didn't really think anything of it because the brake was working well, and I thought, hey, why try and fix something that's working? I figured maybe it was just some weird like Cummins code. But then I really started digging into the wiring more of the exhaust brake circuit. I found this on Cummins forum. This seems to match more closely. And then I realized that the solenoid here could potentially generate flyback voltage. When you abruptly disconnect that ground or that current flow through any inductor, when you abruptly disconnect it, it's going to have a sudden collapse like of a magnetic field. That can create all sorts of weird behavior. Okay? Now, you couple that with connectors that are crimped to the insulation and not the wire, and who knows? I mean, you just have a recipe for disaster. Now, why was this a problem with the Economind hooked up, but not with the Economind hooked up? Well, I think because the Economind is controlling more things in the engine. It's talking to the ECU more. There's more things connected to the ECU. There's more pathways for noise to be picked up by the ECU. That's why I think this was an issue, and with the Economind hooked up, and I wasn't noticing anything without it hooked up. So, I started looking into the relay that came with the Banks exhaust brake. I found this picker part number. If you look at the part number, there's no presence of a D in the part number, which would indicate a diode. So I decided, it'd probably be a good idea for flyback voltage there, or to have a diode there to protect against flyback voltage. And again, like, this is really when I started digging into these signals to see this voltage swing. And I mean, you've got this voltage swing potentially heading right back into the ECU, okay? And that's a big deal. And then when you consider that there's all sorts of things hooked up to this Fuse 28 circuit, now it's the Economind, now it's the exhaust brake, anti-lock brakes. That explains why I was seeing a high voltage there. ECU, powertrain control module gateway, like all these. I even was getting a 513 error code, which was a invalid skim key. This voltage swinging explains why I was getting all these diagnostic codes. Okay. But when you add this like 100 volt voltage swing in this power source, all these systems are going to be affected. I work a lot with weather pack connectors too, and I thought, okay, well maybe when I install this exhaust brake, maybe I put that weather pack connector on, because I do have like a whole tray of weather pack connectors here, and I'm always priding myself with wiring. I always double check my crimps though. That's when I saw this guy's YouTube video, and sure enough there's a weather pack connector there, and I'm like, okay, good. Like, I already was pretty confident that I had never opened up that connector or done anything with these wires, not having a memory of it and looking at it. Okay, yeah, Banks shipped it to me like that. All right, I'm pretty certain of that. Took a picture, and in parts 22 through 25, that's where I'm redoing the crimps and I'm adding the flyback diodes. I don't have a picture here, but I essentially just, added a flyback diode, cathode on the positive, anode on the negative side for the relay coil, as well as right here at the connector for the vacuum solenoid. All right. Since redoing the crimps and adding those flyback diodes, I used 1N4007 at the solenoid because these guys can handle a much higher voltage, and I used 1N4001 on the relay because there's not a whole lot of current going through that relay. But once I redid those crimps and added those flyback diodes, no longer was getting anything, okay? And I've been driving the truck around. It's great. So I think some conclusions here. The crankshaft signal from the Economind is conditioned. It's not as score as a factory, but that's all right. Anything connected to Fuse 28 or controlled by that circuit can introduce noise and is a potential culprit. The exhaust brake solenoid, top culprit, EMI noise, weird issues, connection should be checked. The Economind will indeed amplify any electrical issues. Banks tech support kept telling me that this was the case, but I looked at everything. You could see here, like, all the things that I looked at. I didn't think to check out the exhaust brake, and it wasn't until I just happened to turn the exhaust brake back on in part 12, and it immediately threw a P0336 code, that I realized, oh, okay, maybe it's the exhaust brake. I haven't checked that. One more final note here in conclusion. I do think that the wiring for this exhaust brake, like this right here, is what I typically see with EGT probes. I like it. It's shielded, okay? It can ground right to the manifold of the turbo exhaust, all right? But this brown wire is unshielded that you get in the Economind kit, and it's got, your 2 leads from the EGT probe. Okay, so you're shielded to here with the EGT probe, then you're not shielded. Well, that wire runs all the way along with these exhaust brake. This is a picture of my truck. That wire runs all the way along with the exhaust brake wiring, and that could be picking up noise and feeding it to the Economind as well. So anyway, I ended up buying some shielding here because I thought I was maybe going to wrap that brown wire that was going by the cam and crank signals. I might just go ahead and wrap the EGT probe. I like the way it looks. It feels like maybe it'll protect it a little bit more, possibly help out with some noise and interference, but I don't think I need to. I've been driving around now and it's great, but definitely my issue was bad crimps that came from Banks, the lack of flyback diodes in the exhaust brake circuit. Hands down, once I redid the crimps and put these flyback diodes in, no more issues. So I highly recommend you go check out, if you're having trouble with the exhaust brake, I highly recommend you go check out parts 22 through 25. You can see the job that I did for adding those flyback diodes to these terminals. And yeah, truck's driving great. I'll probably do another video where I just drive around, like showing how much I love the iDash and the Economind as a whole. But I hope this will be of help to tech support and anyone else who's dealing with random issues trying to get the Economind to work, because I like Banks products. I got a lot of hate on the Cummins forum. I was thinking maybe I'd get some support there. And, I love those guys. I'm not going to knock them, but it's like, hey, let's just try to help people out. I love the exhaust brake from Banks. I love the diff cover from Banks. I don't know what the intercooler's doing for me, other than looking cool in my truck. But now that I have the Economind, I can step up the horsepower and the torque. I'm probably going to really see the benefit of having that monster RAM, the intercooler. So, yeah, that's my recap, and I hope this is helpful.